So, hey Aquarius, my name is Chris and this is your beautiful reading for whenever you freaking find it in 2026, and it's kind of the summer thunderstorm reading 2026, if that makes any sense. So I'm not doing the card cross for you, Aquarius. I'm doing 10 cards and I'm just seeing what life shows at us, or what life is showing at you, my friend. A new beginning, and you remember joy. That's what we want to hear. That's beautiful. That's the Fool card, and it's the 6 of Cups. Such a light-hearted energy, optimism, right? New beginnings. And then you just have this feeling like the universe is giving you a blessing. This is what we want to see. Come on. Whoa, okay, there's the 10 of Pentacles, which is wealth, abundance, and prosperity. If you read it in the old school sense, there's a little more complexity to it. The 10 of Pentacles is pretty much this energy where you immerse yourself in your own creation, right? So you're doing something totally in alignment with what you love to do. There's 2 times the emphasis on the heart aspect, right? So emotional aspects. You doing what you love to do in this new beginning. And if you just keep doing that, there's the 10 of Pentacles. And this is kind of, it can mean success in wealth, abundance, and prosperity, Pentacles regard, right? It is the 10 of Pentacles, right? There is money involved, but this is also, there's the Kabbalah actually, right? And the Tree of Life interwoven into this card, very obvious for some of you probably. I'm coming back to this, you're creating something beautiful. That's nice. And there's an old way of doing stuff and there's a new way of doing stuff. The new way is all about the Cups energy, doing what you love to do, and the old way is just the rational mind. So the new paradigm for 2026 and the following years is pretty much to follow your heart, to do what you love to do. Sorry. And make sure that joyful, loving creation is an essential part of your life, preferably every day, not just on the weekend. Very, very important. That's the power couple. That's the Hierophant and the King of Cups. So you get the King and the Queen of Cups and the Hierophant. I think that is pretty similar to the Pisces reading. If you want the full picture, check out your Sun, Moon, and Rising sign, by the way. So how much do we got? 2 more. Yeah. So you're already working on this, and your ships are rolling in, right? You're going to harvest your first results. That's what I'm hearing here. With the 10 of Pentacles, 6 of Pentacles, a lot of Pentacles and Cups energy. 6 of Pentacles, 7 of Pentacles, 10 of Pentacles. You get the 6 of Cups, the Page of Cups, King and Queen of Cups. So, make sure you smell the flowers, you enjoy it. There is a new beginning, and the Fool card is, of course, this, a little bit naive, but also very enthusiastic new beginning. But before that, there is the ending, right? So the ending is indicated here, and the ending is 10 of Swords. So a very intellectual approach to life, very much Pluto in Capricorn. Since 2008, since the last 10 years, but it was also freaking serious. And even in 2025, my God. 2025, I don't know. If you had a good year in 2025, please let me know in the comments. But I think it has been very rare for decent human beings to, haven't had a good year in 2025. So 2025, you probably watched the ending, and in 2026 you got this new beginning. Make sure it makes sense to you. Make sure, even if it's conventional, even if there are people telling you, are you sure you want to do that? That doesn't make sense, right? It's not it might feel good, but nothing will ever come about. Don't you want to do something more practical? That practical thoughts energy thing is not completely over, but you need to open up to joy and love and lightheartedness in your life again, really waking up from that. So you got the 10 of Swords, this is over. But you're waking up from that Judgment card, and then you're handed this cup. And there's a little fish lurking out of this. That's the Page of Cups, right? Something unexpected, something unconventional. And you're just going for it, and you're working on it, and you already planted your seed. 7 of Pentacles is here, so you already made your start, basically, and you just keep going into that direction. Your ships are rolling in, maybe an indication that people will come to help you, but you will cooperate, something like that. You stood your ground in the time of the 5 of Pentacles. There's the Death card, okay, and there's the Page of Cups. Again, bottom of the deck, the Justice card. Bottom of the big deck is the 6 of Pentacles. So it looks pretty good, and it looks like you're finally getting something out of all that mess that maybe has happened in the last few years, since probably 2008, but certainly since the last 9 or 10 years. The most important thing is that you keep your frequency up. The most important thing is that you're not allowing yourself to fall in frequency. That could be anger, guilt, fear, shame, hatred, right? Frustration, right? If you watch the news, if you think about the last 10 years maybe, where you were trying to really make it with your thoughts, right? With your intellect, with making good plans, with doubling down on your efforts, but it totally didn't work, right? And maybe if you look back into that time, you might get a little bitter, right? This is the new beginning, and it's a beautiful new beginning, and you know how you feel, and you do not deny your feelings, even if it's guilt, fear, shame, even if it's hatred, frustration, anger, right? These are very strong, intense emotions, usually tied to the past here, definitively. Allow yourself to feel what you feel, but don't allow yourself to stay in that feeling. So if you have a day where you're just grumpy and where you think, oh God, what happened? How did I even make it out of that? Allow yourself to go into that funk, right? But don't stay there, right? The Hierophant is accepting what he cannot change, and there are indicators here with the 5 of Pentacles and the Death card, even just judgment, and of course the 10 of Swords. Before that beautiful new beginning, there was a dreadful, horrible ending, right? So sometimes that drags you down, but just, you cannot really change the past. That's just how it is. We cannot change the past. And we're wasting our present moment thinking about the past that we cannot change. So if you draw conclusions, if you learn something from the past, that's a good way to think about the past, to, you know, draw your conclusions, to learn something, to apply something in your everyday life. But staying there in resentment and pain is not a good idea, because it takes away your energy from all that joy and from all these blessings and from all that. You're going to create this new beginning fairly quickly into something that has everything to do with you speaking your truth, showing up as who you truly are, maybe leading by example. And I come back to the 10 of Pentacles specifically. Leading in a way that is not necessarily, you don't need a throne, you don't need a job title, you can just do what makes sense to you and what feels right to you, and be very successful in that. You know, there are so many people who wrote great books who other people, they just read them 100 years later, right? Because they were just, as a society, not yet ready to do that, right? So there's a form of mastery that has not necessarily an audience, but you respect it nonetheless, and you create nonetheless that which is meaningful to you. Got 2 times the Page of Cups. This is something unexpected. This is something that mommy and daddy would usually tell you not to do because it's unreasonable, right? But you love to do that, and you're really good at it. And even if you need a day job to do it or something like that, right? Because it's not getting you something, you're still creating something meaningful and beautiful. Whether it's just writing your poem that nobody reads, or you're painting, there's a healing process, and it gives back to you while you're doing it because you love doing it in the here and now. And that in itself is a reward, but you're creating something, right? Maybe 100 years later, somebody finds your poem or your book or whatever you have created, right? First rule of mental health is learn to distinguish who deserves an explanation, who deserves only an answer, and who deserves absolutely nothing. That goes for people, but it also goes for your wandering mind that likes to argue with the past and with things that have happened, and you don't argue with that, right? Just small incremental steps going into that direction that makes sense to you, and keep it simple, a simple happy life, right? And this shows up in 2026 all the freaking time. What does that mean for a collective? For an individual, it would mean spiritual mastership, that you learn something and you begin to teach something, whether it's teaching directly or whether it is crafting it into something that you're making, pottery or paintings or poems or whatever, right? Writing books or creating something. It can also mean that you're just leading by example, but just by implementing your ideals, something that you have learned, now you're implementing it into your life. There's a lot about emotional maturity, speaking your truth, speaking your emotional truth, right? Not trying to please people. Instead respecting yourself and your inner feelings. And if something feels off, then to really trust that and, not rationalize it away, but to trust that feeling. If something within you says that's not right, then that's not right. You trust that feeling. And on the other side, if something feels just right, where you think this is meaningful to me, that makes sense to me, right? Then go after it. Trust that feeling as well. If you feel good while you're doing it, if it feels important to you to express it, then you do that. And sometimes that can be just authenticity or integrity, or just holding yourself in decency in a world that is kind of collapsing in madness, right? Yeah. And just not to be like that, and uphold your principles in a world that is completely, surrendered to madness and indecency. To be decent, to be authentic, to speak your truth. That alone can also mean a form of leadership, right? So it doesn't need to be super grandiose. It just needs to be, there's maturity here, and just being unapologetically you and doing what you love to do. Oromasis is reminding you of this technique where you meditate, basically. That's what I recommend. If you're in this funk, what happened to me, or what has the world come to, things like that, right? And when you look around, and you just see people who, I don't know, that can drag you down, right? The ills of the world can really drag you down. But to make it a conscious decision, that's also emotional maturity. You feel it, You're allowed to feel it, but you decide for yourself, do I want to nurture and cultivate that feeling of resentment and pain, of frustration, of anger maybe? Or do I want to release it and transform it into something better, higher frequency? That is what the Hierophant does, right? And you can do that without having a great job title. You can just do that. But this is your energetic alchemy, and that is exactly what the Hierophant is doing. This is what Oromasis is talking about. You develop mindfulness through meditation, and then if you feel, and I feel like you already did because King and Queen of Cups is here, right? And the Hierophant, of course. But now you have to apply it, right? You have to apply it on a daily basis, not just talking about it or understanding it, but really implementing it into your life and your feelings. That's the measurement, so to speak. That's the indicator. You know, if you feel down there, hatred, anger, frustration, then recognize it and then make a conscious decision to release it through breath work, for example. 7 seconds in, 14 seconds out. 9 seconds in, 18 seconds out. The out breath should be 2 times that of the in breath. Very important. Out breath twice the in breath. And you just breathe it out, literally. Release the negativity, breathe it out. That's how you deal with negative energy. And if you have done that, right, if there is negative energy to deal with, you release it to breath work, negative breathing, and then you stabilize a higher consciousness, you stabilize inner peace through meditation. And that's pretty much the practice of the Hierophant. There's your royal couple with the cups energy, with the emotional energy, and you using your emotions as a guidance, right? As a guide, basically. Are you on the right path? And if what you're doing is creating joy and happiness, that's the right path. If what you're doing is creating frustration and anger, then that's not the right path, or not the right people. Could be as well. You always keep in mind how you feel when you're around certain people. Is your energy rising or is your energy dropping? Very important. And this idea of really using your emotional state as a compass, as a guide, to put that into practice as a daily practice. And if you're really good at it, right? If you focus on the good stuff, on what makes you happy and what is joyful to you, joyful creation, bam, there's the 10 of Pentacles, right? And the universe totally wants to give you something back, my God. And underneath there's a little warning. There's the Lovers, but there's the Lovers clarified by the 7 of Swords. So if you want the summer affair, something like that, just keep in mind that the world is still full of narcissists, right? And sometimes it's better to be alone than to be in bad company, but sometimes you need a summer romance, right? So go for it, but be smart about it. And what have you talked about? Listen to your heart, listen to your inner state. Be mindful enough to know how you feel around certain people that you might meet, right? Maybe it's the Lovers, maybe it's the 7 of Swords guy, right? Who knows? Your heart knows. How do you feel is the big question here. Energy rising or energy dropping? Feeling depleted and exhausted, or feeling, joyful even in anticipation? Total different story, right? The universe wants to give you something back. There's justice clarified by the 6 of Pentacles, just beautiful. So you got the universe on your side, so to speak, right? So you totally deserve happiness. Just focus on that and trust your heart. And that's all I got. Share, like, subscribe, leave a comment, let me know what you think about it, and hopefully see you next time. Check out the summer reading, check out the yearly reading, check out Sun, Moon, Rising, and that's all I got. Now, goodbye.